Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anira. I'm the lecturer of PETE for Elementary Schools, Faculty of Sport Education and Health, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. And I will be the moderator, and I will be the master of ceremony at this conference today. Now we are about to start the session. For those participating in the Zoom meeting, please make sure that you mute yourself during the presentation. Our co-host team will assist you to do so if you find any difficulty. We are recording this session for our documentation and live streaming via Pendidikan Olahraga SPS UPI YouTube channels. We seek your concerns about this matter. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Honorable Director of School Postgraduate, Professor Dr. Syihabuddin MPD, the Honorable Chairman of the 4th ACSDP and also Head of Sport Education Study Program, Professor Dr. Amung Makmun MPD, the Honorable Speakers, Luca Santilli, Executive Director, Tennis Development, International Tennis Federation, Egemen Onen, Global Head of Basketball and Sport Consulting Kid Partners London, Professor Lisa Barnett, Professor at Deakin University, Australia, and Professor Bah Nong PhD, Bangor University, but unfortunately, she is unable to attend this conference today for an urgent matter. And the Honorable Lecturers of Sport Education Study Program and all beloved participants at this conference. Welcome to the 4th International Conference of Sport for Development and Peace with the theme of the paradigm of sport policy and development from sport outcomes to social outcomes 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all pray and thank to Allah Almighty for the abundance of grace and joy that all of us can gather in this conference in a good health. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the event, please allow me to read the schedule for today. The event will begin with the welcoming speech from the chairman of the 4th ACSDP, Professor Amung Makmun, followed by a welcoming speech from the Director of School Postgraduate Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Professor Dr. Syihabuddin, and at the main session, we will have 3 presentations from 3 speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin with the welcoming speech from the chairman of the 4th ACSDP. Please welcome Professor Amung Makmun.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, all conference participants. Many thanks to all of you for being here at the 4th International Conference of Sport for Development and Peace with the theme, the paradigm of sport policy and development from sport outcome to societal outcomes. My name is Amung Makmun, and it's an honor for me to speak on behalf of the organizers of this conference. Before starting, I would like to express my gratitude to the director of the graduate school, Professor Dr. Syihabuddin, and especially to all keynote speakers. 1, Luca Santilli, Executive Director, Tennis Development, International Tennis Federation. 2, Egemen Onen, Global Head of Basketball and Sport Consulting, Kid Partners, London. 3, Professor Lisa Barnett, Professor in Deakin University, Australia, one of the 3 lead investigators to develop the Australian physical literacy definition and standard. 4, Prof. Van Hong PhD, Professor in Bangor University, United Kingdom, Editor-in-Chief, ASEAN Journal of Sport, History, and Culture. Thank you for participating in this conference. Today's conference will learn about sport for development and peace with many topics raised in this conference. Today, the sport has become a critical global issue in carrying out UN mission. Today, sport has many benefits for the development of the sport itself and as an instrument for developing in a nation, society, and societal outcome. Hopefully, this conference can give us more insight into sport development to develop a nation society so that sport become an integral part of a state policy. Once again, I thank you for participating in this conference. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Amung. And ladies and gentlemen, now we have the welcoming speech from Director of School Postgraduate Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Professor Dr. Syihabuddin MPD. To Professor Syihabuddin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ania. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Respected conference committee, especially Pak Amung, Prof. Amung, and team speakers and participants. It is honor to welcome all of you today for the the 4th International Conference of Sport for Development and Peace, which again, just like other conference and seminar, due to COVID-19 outbreak, it is held virtually through a video meeting application. I would like to welcome all the eminent speakers and guests of different countries from different walk of life to exchange experience and work together on the very interesting topic of Indonesian ideas and global issues on sport for development and peace. Respected conference committee, speaker, and all participants, especially my student, sport and physical activity are rapidly gaining recognition as simple, low-cost, and effective means of achieving development goals. In addition to sport's inherent benefit, well-designed sport-based initiative incorporating the best values of sport can be powerful, practical, and cost-effective tool to achieve development and peace objective. I believe that scale and success in harnessing the power of sport for development and peace internationally depend on engaging and mobilizing national government as these drive national and international development strategy and investment. I hope this conference would like to explore the diverse approach of a cross-section of countries to learn what is working, the challenges that remain to be addressed, and how national government in this concerning Indonesian government can broaden the current dialogue to both strengthen current initiative and encourage more countries to harness and integrate the tremendous power of sports into broader national development and peace strategy. Respected conference committee, speaker, and participants, we are all seeking inspiration and hunger with knowledge and experience sharing from all sports science educator and general expert, as well as professional, to discuss more about the theme. Finally, I would like to express my deep respect to all committee from Sport Education Study Program under Prof. Amung, some speakers from abroad, postgraduate student and participant for your positive involvement in this conference. I hope the situation improves soon. We pray that everything will be all right. Okay, stay calm and positive. Follow the advice of experts and local authority. Be kind to each other. May you and your family stay safe, stay healthy, and of course, stay strong. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Assalamualaikum
warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Sihabuddin. Now we have come to the main session. For the next 4 hours, we will have 3 speakers. The first presentation will be from Luca Santilli. The second presentation will be from Egemen Onen. And the third presentation will be from Professor Lisa Barnett. Each keynote speaker will have 60 minutes of presentation, including the moderator summary at the end of the presentation and question-answer session. Before we begin, please allow me to present to you a brief CV of our moderators. Rita Anggorowati is the Academic Director and co-founder of Indonesia Creative Education, and she is certified facilitator of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Franklin Covey and certified as a professional NLP coach from the Indonesia NLP Society. Her research interest is in educational management, administration, and leaderships. Now, without further ado, Ms. Rita, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandira, for the introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, ladies and gentlemen, as some of us now might be participating from some different time zone. So as Ms. Anira already introduced you, that my name is Rita, and I will be serving as your moderator today, and I hope everyone is doing fine amidst the situation, as what our director said. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, as it was mentioned by the Master of Ceremony, I would like to once again welcome you to the 4th International Conference of Sport and Development of Peace. And this time, we will have 3 keynote speakers sharing for now coming from International Tennis Federation, Global Head of Basketball and Sport Consulting, Kin Partners London, and Deakin University, Australia. We will use English as the medium of language. And ladies and gentlemen, for approximately the next 3 hours in this first day, each keynote speaker, as Ms. Anira already told you, 60 minutes is included all. So it's going to be 30 minutes for each of the keynote speaker for presenting their presentation, and then followed by 20 minutes of question and answer session. So ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker would be Mr. Luca Santilli from International Tennis Federation, who will be presenting developing tennis in the digital area. So can we have Mr. Luca on the spotlight? Okay, so probably the committee could help me. Okay, hello.
Hello, Dr. Rita Anggorowati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clear. Okay, is it good morning or good afternoon to you?
It's good morning to me. I'm in London, and so good afternoon to you, I think, if you are in.
Okay, so thank you for being here with us. Okay, before we continue to your presentation, please allow me to introduce you as our honored keynote speaker. So Mr. Luca Santilli, experienced Executive Director of Development with a demonstrated history of working in the sport industry, skilled in an event planning, customer service, coaching, sport, and event management. So he is having a strong community and social service professional, graduated from Science of Education from Rome University La Terza Università, and in Physical Education and Sport Science from University of Rome. So without further ado, Mr. Santilli, the 30 minutes time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rita Anggorowati. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, or depending on where you are. I would like to thank the University of Pendidikan for the invite to be a keynote speaker at the 4th International Conference of Sport for Development and Peace 2022. It is a privilege for me to share with all of you the International Tennis Federation strategy and efforts to develop tennis around the world. I hope that you are doing well and are keeping healthy. I now to share my screen. Okay, I think we are ready to go. I think you see my screen and the slides in full presenter mode. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. So today I will tell a story about a journey which started when Mr. David Haggerty was elected president of the International Tennis Federation in September 2015. And among various changes in the ITF executive structure, I was appointed Director of Development back at the end of 2015. At that time, we did not have a development strategy, yet we did not have a meaningful participation data, no delivery tools or a methodology to measure the impact of the ITF investment and existing development programs on growing our sport. During my presentation today, you will hear about a high-level description of the ITF and its ambition and purpose. But the core presentation will be about the development strategy, the digital transformation journey that we have embarked on at the ITF, and the key projects and digital tools that we have created to grow tennis worldwide. Development is where all starts. This is the ITF mission, and it's at the heart of everything we aim to achieve. We want more children to play tennis so they can run around outside, interact with others, have fun, and learn the rewards of sport. In the photo is a talented player from Indonesia, Priska Nugroho, in honor of the University of Pendidikan, who has been part of few development projects and who won the Australia Open Junior Doubles Championship in 2020. And today, she is studying at the US College in North Carolina, benefiting from a tennis scholarship. And she's already 700 in the world, a very talented tennis player. There is no sport like tennis. Sometimes, even for people like myself, they are in the business of developing the sport, it's easy to forget just how many people across the world play or follow tennis. We believe tennis is the most universal sport in the world today. Here's why. Tennis is played by nearly 90 million people across the globe. When we look at gender, participation in tennis is amongst the most equal in any sport, with 47% female and 53% male. And tennis is played by all age groups and all abilities, and it is an inclusive sport. A couple of years ago, the ITF partnered with Nielsen Sport and Entertainment to get an understanding of the fan and consumer landscape within the sport ecosystem. Thanks to this Nielsen survey, we know that tennis is one of only 3 sports with over 1 billion followers. Tennis has a huge global fan base, and over 1.2 billion people across 34 countries have an interest in our sport, with most fans concentrated in Europe. We are third after football and basketball, but our sport has a significant better gender equality, with 47% represented by women. Before Nielsen, the ITF partnered with several sport marketing agencies, and for many years we received reports that we obviously had to pay for, which provided the ITF with an insight on the main tennis countries in the world. However, as far as tennis development was concerned, this was not sustainable, both financially and for what were our needs of measuring and monitoring. We needed a more reliable and cost-effective methodology for measuring our investment and impact on growing the sport. Therefore, we decided to engage with our over 210 member nations to get an understanding of the global tennis landscape and to answer key questions. For instance, how many tennis players do we have? How many of them do we know? How many courts? How many coaches? And so on. Additionally, having a stakeholder system to collect data regularly allows us to control or question and guide the methodology of collecting data from professional market agency when we decide to use them. And hence, the first ITF Global Tennis Report was published in 2019 with 195 national associations providing data. And the second one was published in 2021. It was the largest survey of worldwide tennis participation and performance ever undertaken in the sport. From now on, every Olympic year, so every quadriennial, we aim to publish a global tennis report on the status of our sport. All this work was done to ensure that the ITF and its member nations increase their awareness and engage in the digitalization journey. That we invested development resources based on data metrics, that the ITF and the member nations improve in data collection and educated themselves on the importance of data analysis and insight to drive participation in the country and take informed decisions on player development and prioritize investment. And finally, that the ITF and all member nations benefit from measuring insights and could tell a better story about themselves and our sport. If tennis is a unique sport, we also believe that the International Tennis Federation is a unique federation with a vital role to play. As the number here on the slide suggests, with over 100 years of history, over 210 member nations across 6 continents, and with over 3,000 events organized annually, we do make a huge impact in our sport. Our ambition is delivering tennis for future generations, and this describes our long-term direction of travel. Our purpose is ensuring the long-term growth and sustainability of tennis. These on the screen are the ITF 8 priorities. They are at the heart of ITF 2024, the ITF's roadmap, providing a framework for what the ITF need to do and achieve our ambition and stay true to our purpose. This slide shows the top line requirement for each priority: investment, development, Davis Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, Olympic and Paralympics, opportunity, partnership, integrity, and communication. And development, which we are discussing today, is one of those. The 8 ITF 2024 priorities together form a very significant agenda, and we expect this transformation to bring by 2024 more players and higher standard of performance, stronger empowered member nations, deeper relationship across the tennis world built on mutual respect and trust, a game that is more cherished and protected, a transformed and dynamic ITF able to innovate. Development encapsulates the ITF's mission of growing the game around the world. Here on this slide, you have the entire 2021-2024 development strategy, which is a continuation of the previous 4-year strategy. As you have heard, development is integral to and a key priority of ITF 2024, our global strategy. The strategy has provided a clear sense of direction and purpose, from its vision and its mission to increase the number and standard of players worldwide, to the 2 core objectives of increased participation and develop talented players, and to significantly contribute to the growth of the total player population to 120 million by 2030. The 9 strategic principles that guide our work daily on all the projects under the 6 strategic pillars: participation, education, administration resources, events, facilities, and performance. By working on the 6 strategic pillars, and each of the projects listed below in green color, we are able to deliver on the two core objectives to increase participation and develop talented players. In particular, we want a strategy which was data-driven and metric-based. I would like to point out to you 3 of the 9 strategic principles: technology, monitoring and measuring, innovation and flexibility, as they are key to understand our journey and where we are today. We have spent a lot of time and worked very hard ensuring that our stakeholders, national and regional associations, would engage, support, and embrace the strategy and work together along with us toward delivering our core objectives. Since 2017, we have emphasized the importance of working together, and that the ITF development strategy is delivered not only by the ITF development team in London and the 10 ITF development officers based around the world, but rather in close collaboration with the 6 regional associations and the 213 ITF member nations. During these difficult times, more than ever, it's important that the ITF and its stakeholders work together to ensure the growth and sustainability of the sport. We are stronger and smarter if we work together. Development is also central to achieve one of the most ambitious targets of ITF 2024, which is 30 by 30. A very ambitious goal of growing participation from 87 to 120 million players by 2030. Our aim is to increase opportunities to play for all ages, genders, playing standards, and physical abilities. Several programs launched by the ITF are instrumental in achieving 30 by 30, including the rollout of the ITF World Tennis Number, a global rating for all standard of play, and the ITF Academy, a bespoke online educational platform, are game-changing digital projects, along with all other ITF participation programs that actually put a racket in the hands of new players. The Junior Tennis Initiative and its online reporting platform, which support 140 nations around the world, the Tennis Festival Toolkit, Tennis Dance, and Tennis in the School, Tennis Express, a program for adults, and others. All of these participation programs support 30 by 30 and the ITF participation pathway. And this is something that the nations are engaged with our 10 ITF development officers. We are the only international tennis organization that currently invests millions of dollars in tennis development worldwide. The total investment in development since 1986 stands at close to $150 million. Since 2016, spending in development, as you can see on this slide, has more than doubled. Only the pandemic in 2020 has reduced our ability to invest in development. But with this level of funding, we are transforming tennis development worldwide and, importantly, ensuring the long-term health of our sport. We have now started the recovery phase from the pandemic with a 2022 budget well over $11 million. To give you an idea of what we are working at present in development, the strategic priority for the 2022 development budget were to support the return to tennis by ensuring that all regional teams and individual events will get back on the calendar, to invest in participation with a focus on the ITF World Tennis Number, our global rating digital project, and on more funding for the Junior Tennis Initiative, the 14 and under national program, which support 140 nations. Here on the slide, you have a breakdown by strategy area. The events and performance area spending amounts to over 50%. The education and participation areas about 26% of the investment. And they include the ITF Academy and the ITF World Number digital projects. Over the past 4 years, close to $2 million has been awarded to 48 national associations to build, expand, and refurbish the tennis facilities. We have maintained significant investment in this important area of facility, and we have launched a new facility portal in 2022 to assist national associations in applying for funds from government and private sponsors. Finally, the administration resource pillars include the Regional Association Administration Grants, the ITF Development Officer projects, and cost for communication and promotion, staff travel, and the Development Advisors and Coaches Commissions. Although not the core subject in this presentation today, I wanted to give you a flavor of some of our most successful programs within the performance pillar. About $1.3 million annually is invested on touring team program to have regional international teams to invite the best national players to travel and compete under the supervision of high standard ITF coaches with all costs and expenses provided for. We basically have built a pyramid of opportunities from national, regional to international level for talented players to progress, as we recognize that a significant barrier to the international player pathway for many talented players is the lack of funding. So in this photo, you have the international touring team that competed this year at the Australia Junior Championship with players from all over the world that were selected based on their ranking and age. Another very meaningful program supported by $1 million investment every year is the Grand Slam Player Grant program, where players age 14-21 for female and 15-22 for male receive $25,000 players grant towards the cost of the annual competition schedule. There are players that have been able to receive these grants up to 4 consecutive years, having met all the rankings and age criteria. And a fantastic story and achievement for this program was when grant recipients Ons Jabeur from Tunisia, Uwe Urkac from Poland, and Kasper Ruud from Norway were able to break into the top 10 players in the world. Through technology innovation, along with measuring monitoring, the ITF wants to encourage and support all our 200 and plus member nations to move to digital administration by helping them to establish more cost-effective and efficient ways of delivering core tennis development activities and grow the sport in each country. Technology, and in particular good data, is an essential part of our modern digital society. It powers our mobile applications, drives most of the processes we engage with every day, empowers our entertainment and media providers, and now underpins our major sporting occasions. We all know the world is changing fast, and the various audiences, players, fans, the media, coaches, officials, tournament organizers, sponsors, the sport industry itself, with which the ITF and the National Association interact with, all of them increasingly expect to be able to access the services and information that they need via digital channels quickly and easily. Today, we have developed 2 innovative platforms, the ITF World Tennis Number and the ITF Academy. Without this, we would be offside, unable to seize any opportunities to self-determine our objectives. And of course, you can see in the slide, we were extremely pleased that both the ITF Academy and the ITF World Tennis Number were among the finalist products considered for the 2021 and 2022 Sport Technology Award, respectively. How digitalization has become central to tennis development in such a short time is evident to everyone involved. Developing digital communities to facilitate tennis tournaments and competition on a national level are key services also to retain participants in the sport. And this is why the ITF has positioned digital transformation as a priority. We must respond to this expectation from our different stakeholders and customers by delivering the digital services that address their needs and demands. We have had a tremendous uptake and adoption from national association for both the ITF Academy and the ITF World Tennis Standard platform, which have been created for the National Association to respond to this challenge and to grow the sport. We also launched the Tennis Open Data Standards to facilitate exchange of data across the world, the Tennis ID single sign-on for all involved in tennis, not only players, but also administrators and officials. All of this is part of the digital transformation strategy that the ITF is rolling out to ensure that the ITF member nations can keep up and remain relevant in the sport. Very importantly, we are about to roll out in June and July an ITF tournament management system that will allow all nations to have an automated system to manage their player data, the tournaments, at a cost which is below market level. It is important to emphasize the investment made on this ITF digital platform and tools are creating significant savings to the 230 member nations and 6 regional associations. They don't have to build this platform, as this has been done for them free of charge by the ITF. It is quite amazing how much the tennis landscape has changed in such a short time due to innovation in digital technology. There are so many private companies, private equities, and startups moving into the sport business with digital solution. And some of them do not only want to provide and sell digital solution, but actually become the ones that have the single sign-on with the tennis community and challenge the role of the traditional governing bodies. In this fast-moving digital world where there are opportunities for national association, but also many threats. For example, Playtomic, the #1 app for paddle and tennis in the world, the largest online community so far, raising 63 million euro last year and anticipating raising 100 million euros in 2022. How do we, as an international federation, work with or compete against Playtomic and their technology? These are the challenges posed to governing tennis bodies by this fast-changing digital landscape. Also, variation of tennis, such as pickleball in North America, and paddle in Europe and South America, and soft tennis in Asia. The fast growth can also be a threat to the sport of tennis and can cannibalize our tennis courts if we don't manage it. The ITF Digitalization Grant Program can help federations to begin or finish the digitalization journey. It is designed to help our member nations introduce digital resources, find more efficient ways to manage their operations. The program now is open for application on a permanent basis, and priority is given to projects that assist national association integration with the ITF World Tennis Number. Since the program launched in 2018, the ITF has awarded more than $450,000 to over 50 nations. Digital technology is what has made the ITF World Tennis Number project possible. The World Tennis Number is the most relevant ITF digital transformation project today. A digital development tool offered free of charge to all national and regional associations. The ITF World Tennis Number is a unifying the sport by establishing a common language, a single global benchmark to grow tennis in each territory and continent around the world. Across 6 continents, over 135 ITF member nations, representing 78 million players worldwide, have signed up the license and user agreement to share data and receive World Tennis Number for their tennis community. This nation can now exchange data with the ITF safely and legally, as well as access to the digital platform and test the algorithm for the players before rolling it out. I'd like now to show you this video and hope you can appreciate the audio. With the ITF World Tennis Number, the vision held by the ITF Board of Directors was to create a common language and bring ITF National Association into the digital age by creating a unifying digital platform to reach and engage millions of amateur players around the world via the national associations. The ITF World Tennis Number is complementary to all national ratings and rankings, and each nation will use it according to their needs. The objective is to provide a digital tool for the nations to engage with their recreational players and ensure level-based play and enjoyable tennis experience for all. The data onboarding process involves bringing tournament results and player data from each nation into the Central World Tennis Number database. The quality and completeness of that data is the biggest factor in how quickly and easily we can bring a nation onto the digital platform and produce player ratings. The ITF data team provides guidance and assistance to help a national association through this data integration process so that we reach the level of accuracy that the rating algorithm requires to ensure a precise indication of each player's ability. It is very exciting that the World Tennis Number is now used as a player entry acceptance criteria after the ITF World Rankings in ITF Juniors and Senior Tours around the world. Regarding our communication and marketing plan to support the National Association, this involves equipping the Federation with our toolkit containing communication material about the World Tennis Number, as well as encouraging the creation of internal and external communication strategy to enable the World Tennis Number to be incorporated into all tennis activities in the country. It is also a fundamental priority of the ITF to share best practices with the National Association so that the communication actions are delivered, taking into consideration each segment of tennis player, such as juniors, amateurs, and seniors. Moreover, creating value for players, providers, and the National Association around the World Tennis Number in the short and long term is an essential pillar of communication and marketing in continents around the world. Monitoring and reporting will guarantee the efficiency of the national regional strategies adopted. This infographic shows the strategy and summaries of the objectives, the principles, the core services, and the products of the ITF Academy, which is the online education platform of the International Tennis Federation. The key principles are aligned with those of the ITF, and the core services and products are divided into National Association membership, the library, the education, and the certification. More than 80 national associations are using the ITF Academy membership package today to run all education activities with the teachers, coaches, parents. They can upload their own content in their own dedicated space or use the content provided by the ITF. The ITF Academy is an integral element of the blended learning methodology already implemented in all ITF certification courses, with a combination of online and face-to-face delivery of courses, providing an improved experience. Today, the ITF Academy has over 200,000 users from 210 nations. They have access to a library of more than 1,300 content items and 165 online courses available in 8 languages. I'm very pleased to say that the Indonesian Tennis Federation is now translating the content of the Academy in Indonesian language. Last year, we launched the players and parents sections, the online tutor training courses, the blended delivery of all the courses, as well as the organization of the ITF World Coaches Conference by BNP Paribas, who had more than 1,750 coaches representing over 150 nations. This year, we have launched a self-evaluation tool for users, and in the last part of 2022, we'll be launching a new section for tennis managers. In addition to the dedicated section for coaches, parents, and players, sports science and medicine courses have also been published, including health benefits of our sport, healthcare standards for national and international events, but also courses for the ITF World Tennis Number, ITF Advantage All, our gender equality strategy, safeguarding for children, Tennis Express, program for adult beginners and COVID-19 return to tennis guidelines. The ITF Academy is an educational platform that provides the tennis stakeholders with the most up-to-date content and resources, which are both research and evidence-based. The ITF has agreements and cooperates with some of the best sport, university, and tennis research centers in the world. These content resources are based on data, facts, and conclusions from studies published in peer-review academic journals, as well as in our ITF Coaching and Sports Science Review, the official coaching and sports science publication of the ITF. Therefore, the development strategy is not only data-driven, but also scientifically based, which allow us to implement our programs with a wealth of knowledge that is put at the service of the game. An exciting online digital platform. This is open to everyone to visit, enjoy, and register, and most of the content is free of charge. In 2018, we created the ITF World Participation Conference to ensure we had a catalyst and a platform to talk about participation and growing the game, not only within tennis, but within the sport itself. After 2 successful editions, in-person events, the conference was cancelled in 2020 due to the pandemic. In 2021, the ITF World Participation Conference was hosted virtually for the first time in July under the topic of innovating to drive participation in sport. 466 delegates from 142 different nations, the International Olympic Committee, 9 international federations, including FIFA, sport industry representatives were in attendance to hear from 33 speakers during the 3-day event. The conference emphasized again the ITF's unique position in tennis leadership as the global guardian of tennis. The exclusive content insight reinforces that the ITF and the national associations are the only organization with the capability of providing a reliable global overview of our sport to a data-driven strategy for its growth. And the 2022 ITF World Participation Conference will be virtual again from 17th to the 19th of July, and all related information are on the ITF website and the ITF Academy for registration. I would like to conclude my presentation reiterating the importance of the ITF investment in digital transformation, which has been designed to grow and support a digital ecosystem for tennis worldwide, which supports our development strategy. With the ITF World Tennis Number and the ITF Academy, we have seen the rollout of some game-changing innovation. With the Global Tennis Report, we have established a benchmark of the worldwide tennis landscape, which is managed by the ITF and the member nations. With the ITF World Participation Conference, we established a forum to focus on how we grow our sport. This digital initiative will not only provide significant savings for the ITF family, they will also assist our nations in the drive to increase tennis participation in the countries, supporting the retention of players at all levels and increasing player recruitment for clubs and tennis programs. I now give back the floor to Dr. Rita Angorowati, and I thank you very much for the attention.
Okay, thank you so much for your fruitful presentation. I got carried away actually. But then before we come to the question and answer session, I would like to ask permission to probably read the short summary of your presentation in Bahasa Indonesia to assist the audience in understanding the materials. Hope you don't mind with that arrangement.
Absolutely not.
Oke, thank you. Bapak Ibu sekalian, pada presentasinya Bapak Luka atau Mr. Luka dengan judul Developing Tennis in the Digital Era, beliau bercerita mengenai perjalanan perkembangan International Tennis Federation sejak tahun 2016, di mana awalnya tidak memiliki perencanaan sistem pengembangan program ataupun hal pendukung lainnya. Mimpi terbesar pada saat itu adalah bagaimana bisa mengembangkan sebuah organisasi atau federasi yang bisa memperkenalkan tenis dimulai sejak dini, berbekal pemaknaan bahwa hampir 87 juta pemain tenis secara global telah ada di dunia. Tenis menjadi satu dari 3 olahraga dengan peminat terbanyak selain sepak bola dan bola basket. Sejak 2019, perkembangan tenis berjalan selayaknya yoyo, mengalami naik dan turun, maka kemudian ITF mulai melakukan pengumpulan data dari agen profesional untuk mengetahui data yang akurat mengenai perkembangan tenis dalam angka dan tertuang dalam ITF Global Tennis Report 2019. Ini merupakan tonggak awal dalam upaya penyajian data dalam koleksi data analisis dan juga temuan-temuan yang disajikan secara menarik dan mudah dipahami untuk bisa mendukung perencanaan serta manajemen yang lebih terorganisir dengan maksud serta tujuan untuk mengembangkan olahraga tenis di seluruh dunia. Tujuan yang ingin dicapai ITF pada tahun 2024 adalah berkontribusi secara signifikan pada pertumbuhan total atlet tenis sebanyak 120 juta orang di tahun 2030. ITF memiliki 8 prioritas global strategi yang dicanangkan, yaitu investasi, pengembangan, terselenggaranya Davis Cup dan Billie Jean King Cup, Olimpik dan Paralympics, kesempatan keinklusivitasan olahraga tenis, kemitraan, integritas, serta komunikasi. Kedelapan prioritas ini ditujukan untuk bisa menambah jumlah atlet dengan performa yang lebih meningkat, mengempower para negara anggota memiliki hubungan yang lebih kuat di antara para pemain tenis dunia. Dan ini tentu saja menjadikan ITF sebagai organisasi yang perlu untuk bisa senantiasa bertransformasi dan dinamis serta mampu berinovasi. Seluruh tujuan ini dipercaya dapat tercapai dengan memanfaatkan transformasi digital melalui partisipasi, berbagi pengetahuan, komunikasi, serta pendidikan di antara sesama negara anggota. Maka semangat kolaborasi menjadi kunci, demikian pula halnya dengan memaksimalkan unifikasi platform digital sebagai sebuah solusi cerdas untuk memaksimalkan proses transformasi digital. Tentu saja transformasi digital memerlukan pencarian dana untuk membiayai proyeknya, dan ini sangatlah dimungkinkan serta telah dibuktikan oleh ITF dengan mengkomunikasikan serta menumbuhkan rasa percaya terhadap program planning, rencana marketing serta toolkit, dan juga praktik-praktik baik pada donatur yang memiliki visi dan misi yang sama, selain juga mengembangkan pelatihan-pelatihan secara online dan hybrid dalam program ITF Academy yang tersedia dalam platform digital. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we come to the question and answer session. I already saw one person, in which probably I know, to post their question. So please, okay, so Mr. Chamtinas, okay, I think you are going to be the first that is going to post your question. Okay, please.
Good morning, Professor. So good morning, Luca. Good morning, everyone. Luca, thank you very much for being with us. So it has been a great pleasure to have you in this session. So I have one question to you. You have been in tennis business for I don't know how many years, so many years. But can I ask you, what are the latest difficulties and challenges you are facing with? So what are the biggest challenges you are facing with, and how you are trying to deal with these problems? So what I thought about is, because of the indifference of regions in the world, your task is quite big. So you are dealing with the world, and the continents you are dealing with are quite different than each other. So how do you solve different kind of problems, and what are the biggest challenges you are facing with? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chamtinas. A pleasure to see you and this conference. And yes, it's a very interesting question. As soon as you mentioned challenges to develop our sport around the world, my thought went to the incredible years that we had to go through in the last 3 years, starting with the pandemic, which we are almost through, but not entirely true. There are areas in the world where still we cannot play our sports, and referring to Southeast Asia, China, and the Pacific is just opening up, and so this has been very difficult. And obviously, the war in Europe is creating some big problems to a part of the world community. As you said, Cem, we are a global family. We have stakeholders from all over the world. And so our challenge is, first of all, to understand our stakeholders. So we have 3 official languages, English, French, and Spanish, but we know that this is not enough. So we are culturally and mentally open to work in different cultures with different behaviors and attitude. And our team, it's absolutely international. And so we are able to understand the different part of the world and work closely with our national associations. In terms of challenges, is that every national association has its own specific needs and circumstances, and customization, it's one of our principles. So we understand that what works in Turkey not necessarily is going to work in Indonesia or in Moldova or in Dominican Republic. So we learn every day with our member nations, with our regional associations, and we have experts from every part of the world. I think our wealth and our resources are mainly on the people and the human resources that are involved in our sport. We are very fortunate because we have an army of volunteers. They are very, very important for tennis, and they serve, work, and develop the sport at different levels without any compensation. We wouldn't be able to afford paying for all these people. So, and I'm referring to volunteers. They are members of the National Association, of the clubs, of the local tennis facilities, and then they progress to be member of a board of regional association of the international federations. All of these volunteers use their professionalism and knowledge, passion, and love for the sport without a need of compensation. So the executive staff is supported by this very important workforce. I hope this gives you a concise view, because obviously it was a very open questions, and I hope I've answered your main points.
Yes, Luca, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question and answer. And then we still have actually 5 minutes before your end of session. And I would like to invite Pak Bambang Abdul Jabbar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Rita. Yeah, may I introduce myself, Mr. Luca? I'm Bambang Abdul Jabbar from School of Physical Education. It's nice to hear your explanation about the way how ITF invite anyone to involve in playing tennis. I have 2 questions. Maybe you can explain to me how we can integrate the social culture, because then in our country, being tennis player is only for the certain people. Not so many people can do that because the equipment is very high, it's very expensive. Then how we can handle it, the social culture, to being a possibility to improve tennis in one area or in one society. And the second, perhaps you already published the book. Is it possible if you have the book and share to to the committee perhaps, and maybe I can read how the way I take in doing organized tennis for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bambang, for your two questions. Very nice meeting you, although virtually. And regarding the question of social culture integration, it's a very good question, a very interesting question. This has always been historically one of the barriers that our sport has tried to eliminate. And I think I would like to say, although the world is a big place, that step by step, year by year, we have improved immensely. We also have a program that supports 140 nations around the world with tennis equipment and to provide national associations with free balls, free rackets, free bats, free nets, strings for rackets, and also Indonesia is involved in this program. Also, we work with manufacturers to ensure that the price of the equipment it's affordable, and we try to count on our national associations and government relationship to ensure that access to tennis facilities is affordable, so to tennis courts. It's also true that we have introduced for children tennis stands or tennis in the schools with red, orange balls, with balls that are slower and they bounce less than the normal balls. So you can actually play tennis everywhere. I personally play tennis against the wall. When I was a kid in my country, in Italy, I play tennis in the streets with my friends. And the difficult things is not so much to start, is to progress, is when you want to go from playing on the wall and playing on the street or in the school to play in a tennis club. This is where we as an international federation are working with the national associations and the governments and the sport authorities in each country to improve the integration, as you say. And your second question, my answer is, Bambang, the best things would be to follow the ITF Academy. Everything that we have, we put it online. And 99% of the content is free of charge and it's in 8 languages. The Indonesian Tennis Federation is also translating the content as we speak. So I would like to invite you and your pupils, your students, to visit the ITF Academy, and where you will find a wealth of resources. We're really moving to online content now, and also we save a lot of money, and we use this money to develop the sport around the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, for your answer. And then actually this is precisely 14:05 in Indonesia time. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Luca. And I believe that there is one question left in the chat message. So probably you can answer the question through the chat. Would that be fine with you? Okay, thank you so much for that. Okay, Mr. Luca, thank you for being here with us. So we are going to move over to the second session. It's nice to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for your work. All the best.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, you too. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, now may I invite our second speaker, Mr. Egemen Onen from Global Head of Basketball and Sport Consulting Kin Partners London, with a triggering topic called, is it possible to achieve sustainable impact through hosting major events? So the committee, before I read the curriculum vitae, that it's going to be a bit long because I know that he's got so many experiences in his life. So can we have Mr. Onen to be so
Yes, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. Hi, it's good morning to you, is it? Or
8 a.m. That's 8:05 in London.
Oh, okay. Thank you for waking up so early. Okay, so then I'm going to read some of your curriculum vitae, and I believe that you are going to introduce yourself too. So, Mr. Onen is a sport business executive with diverse commercial, strategic, and operational experience in both client and supplier organization within the sports and major event industries. So he works with athletes, local and national governments, organizing committees of major sporting events, and sport federation with expertise spanning across sports economy, sport policy, talent management, commercial partnership, bidding for and hosting major sporting events. He currently leads the basketball and sport consulting division at Kin Partners, a London-based sport and entertainment management company, working with some of the world's most iconic athletes and sport properties. Okay. Previously, he was a director for Global Consulting, a London-based management consultancy specializing in sports, and had held various roles at the Turkish Basketball Federation. Okay. He has been feeling really lucky to work in high impact projects in more than 11 countries across 3 continents. Clients included the Tokyo 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games, Lima 2019, and Santiago 2023, Pan American Games, and the city-state of Neom in Saudi Arabia, among others. He also served as a subject matter expert on global sport economy for the British government's Department for International Trade for 4 years, and sat in the Emerging Markets Committee of the Government Sector at Visory Group on sports economy. His key business skills covers operational finance, commercial and contract management, business operation, development of new and existing business, team and relationship building. Hopefully I read that correctly, okay? So
Rita, you read it correctly, and thank you for the person that put this together. It is a very detailed overview of my background. Thank you.
Okay, my most welcome. Without further ado, Mr. Onen, the time is yours. You have 30 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I am going to share my screen first. 1 second, please.
Okay, please, can you do that? Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, distinguished guests, dear professors and dear students, it's good to be here with you today. I will be covering a topic that is somewhat popular amongst the academics who are working in this space, as well as the journalists. I am going to try and look into this from a practitioner's point of view, so to speak. I will be talking briefly about myself, not any longer probably, as Rita has given a quick sort of background. I will be giving you a brief review of major events, different types of events, what we mean by legacy of major sporting events, the impacts of these events, key issues and challenges that are facing the sector, conclusions, and then I am going to conclude by talking briefly about social value of sport by providing a sort of recommended reading for those who are interested in the topic. And hopefully by the end of the session, you will understand different event types, what we mean by legacy, different event impacts and how to measure them, key connections between major events and cities, key issues and challenges facing the host cities, and trends in measuring social value of a sport. As Rita briefly mentioned, I work as a global head of basketball at Sport Consulting at Kin Partners. I also sit in the board of Basketball England, the governing body of basketball in this country. I also served as a global sports economy specialist for UK Department for International Trade. Under this role, I actually spent considerable amount of time in Jakarta in the lead up to the 2018 Asian Games. And I actually hosted the then Vice President Yusuf Kalla in London, explaining the British expertise in this space. And some of the projects that I am involved in, I work with some of the NBA franchises, including the Milwaukee Bucks, the New York Knicks, helping them on their commercial partnerships, managing the up-and-coming NBA prospects from Europe, and my consultancy work mainly is around major sporting events. And I have been lucky to be involved in many different events of different size and scale, and in different stages of what we call an event life cycle. Some were in the pre-bid stage, some were in the legacy stage, and some were on the operational delivery stage. And we are going to talk about major events a little bit. And one of the reasons why I chose this topic is that obviously Indonesia is emerging as a destination for major sporting events. After hosting the Asian Games, you will now be hosting a portion of the FIBA World Cup next year. And obviously the country has expressed interest in hosting the Olympic Games. And I don't know how much this topic is debated in Indonesia, but hopefully this presentation is going to contribute to it. First, I would like to sort of give you an overview of different event types. There are slightly different ways of categorizing events based on who makes the categorization and how they want to use that categorization, right? For instance, the Sports Industry Research Center categorizes the major events mainly based on their economic impact. One group is irregular major international spectator events generating significant economic activity and media interest, such as the Olympic Games or the FIFA World Cup. The second group is major spectator events generating significant economic activity and media interest and part of an annual domestic cycle, so which happens pretty much every year, such as the FA Cup in England or the Super Bowl in the United States. A third group of events is irregular events, one-off major spectator or competitor events generating uncertain level of economic activity. One example is Grand Prix in athletics. The fourth category is major competitor events generating little economic activity as part of an annual cycle, such as the basketball championship of Indonesia, let's say. Okay. Another grouping of events is from the Urban Land Institute. They basically make their grouping based on the theme of a said event, such as trade, culture, sports, or political, and they split those into two by large and smaller events. As an industry practitioner, I prefer a grouping that is based on number of sports that an event features and the geographic representation of participating countries, because this makes it easier for me to understand the scope, size, and scale for planning purposes. And based on this, we have 4 categories, starting with single sport regional events, such as the UEFA European Championships or the Asian Cup in football, or single sport global events, such as the FIFA World Cup or the Rugby World Cup, the global multi-sport events, such as the Olympic Games, World Games, University Games, and the Paralympic Games. And the other one is multi-sport regional events, such as the Asian Games and the Commonwealth Games. The event life cycle is actually a lot longer than only the planning phase, let's say, because on the media we often know, we often come across news about an event about like 2 years in the lead up to an event and during the event time. But this process actually begins long before the event actually starts. For the Olympic and Paralympic Games, pre-bidding stage begins almost 20 to 10 years before the event itself. And this is the stage where aspiring host cities assess the feasibility of hosting an event. And if they find it feasible, then they make a decision to bid or not to bid, for an event. And this bidding stage begins for the Olympic Games. This is about between 7 to 9 years. For the FIFA World Cup, it is more than 10 years. because the competition is really, really tough. And then the event hosting for events like the Olympic Games, where the operational requirements and actually capital infrastructure requirements are too much. The event hosting itself, actually, including planning and delivery, can take up to 7 years. And then finally, you have the legacy stage, which begins actually before the event ends, because any host city must start planning for legacy before their event ends, and then commit to deliver their legacy. And based on what their legacy aspirations are, this can be 1 year, 2 years, or 15 years. I mean, the legacy program of the London 2012 Olympics, which we are going to talk about briefly in the upcoming slides, it is still ongoing, you know. So this is what we call an event life cycle. In summary, major events are events that are so large that they affect whole economies of host countries. They are reported in the global media, therefore provide significant exposure to global audience. This comes with risks, with a lot of reputational risks if they fail to deliver, obviously. These are highly prestigious if done right. They occur on a regular basis. They usually require a competitive bidding process. They can have positive and negative impacts, and they almost always occur only once in a destination, although this is increasingly less so because of a number of reasons, and we will actually talk about those in the subsequent stages. Now, achieving sustainable impact through hosting major sporting events, it's something that is easier said than done, because there are many constraints when it comes to ensuring that the legacy benefits are materialized. But before we talk about this, let's sort of look at what legacy is about. One thing that we need to know is that most of the host cities or host countries do not host these events only for 2 weeks or 10 days of competition. These are massive projects which cost billions and billions. And actually there should be a benefit beyond these 2 weeks of entertainment. So legacy is what we mean by this, you know. It is about impact, change, long-term benefits, catalyst, in the sense that using the event for development, socially, economically, and in many other aspects, as well as sustainability. Legacy, on the other hand, is not about referring just to the after use or exit strategies for key facilities. It's also not about building permanent venues and then trying to find a use for them after hosting that major event. It is not also about short-term unsustainable projects, and it is not expenditure, but it is an investment. Each city would and should have their own legacy goals, depending on what their aspirations are, why they are hosting a specific major sporting event. But in general, the legacy goals can be probably captured under 4 main pillars. These are sport, which includes sports participation, physical activity, accessibility of venues, a robust talent identification program, promoting active lifestyle, enabling community enjoy themselves while doing sports, and obviously increasing the performance side of sports, right? The second one is social, education, and health pillar, which is primarily about people's self-esteem, promoting inclusion and diversity and equality, personal development, empowering people, empowering the underprivileged parts of the society, linking health and sport, promoting volunteerism, and building a local capability in order to do more of these major events or major projects. It doesn't have to be a sporting project. It can actually be a major project. And Lima 2019 is a good example of this, and I'm going to talk about it in the upcoming slides. The third pillar is economic development, which includes tourism, promoting or attracting inward investment, promoting innovation, new business creation, regional and global positioning. So it's basically about the image of a host city or a host country, entrepreneurship, and promoting your country as a destination for other major sporting events. The fourth one is urban development, which primarily covers transport infrastructure, safety and security, mobility and accessibility issues, promoting green and sustainable infrastructure, integrating different parts of the infrastructure across the country or across the host city, culture, quality of life, festivals, and local communities. What we should realize is that looking at this list, it's a very, very big list, right? And it is not so easy to achieve all of these because in order to deliver all of these legacy aspirations, you need to bring on board a lot of stakeholders. And sometimes these stakeholders have conflicting interests. Something that is a priority for, let's say, for the Ministry of Transport is not necessarily a priority for the Minister of Sports. So there should be a high level of integration and an entity that is dedicated to the legacy program, which should be driving the legacy program, bringing together all these stakeholders. Let's look at the urban and sport pillars a bit closely. I would like to give you some case studies. So in terms of urban regeneration, this is primarily about using major sporting events as an opportunity to fast track regeneration and urban development projects. And because there is an unmovable deadline in terms of the start date of an event, these events can act as an accelerator. Okay, let's say you have a new metro line that needs to be developed, right? This may be delayed for years and years. But let's say Jakarta hosts to Olympic Games in 2036, and everybody knows that that specific metro line needs to be ready before the event. Therefore, it is going to act as an accelerator if used properly. And again, like similarly, it enables unification around a single purpose. So all these different agencies would come together with a unified purpose of delivering a successful games. However, when the people who work in this space, the academics, journalists, or industry practitioners like us, there is not so much of, it is not so easy to talk about the regeneration effect of major sporting events in most countries. Because, as I said, these conflicting interests of different stakeholders and having to prioritize the event itself rather than the regeneration benefits, it makes it really difficult, you know, to use these events in that regard. But there are some good examples, such as London in this regard, and we will talk about this in a second. One of the other problems is that these event-based regeneration projects are symbolic and sometimes maybe highly temporal in a city's evolution. They make good PR out of it, but not necessarily it is good for the society itself. And obviously, genuine regeneration is not same as urban renewal. When we talk about urban regeneration, this is about this is not only about building new things, but also about improving the lives of the community and also changing the demographic of a certain area for good, obviously, by using the opportunity that an event brings. I think one of the successful examples of urban regeneration is London 2012. London has used this opportunity to really transform East London, a very deprived part of East London. And as you can see today, it's a really lively area. Not only there are new places for quality living, but also it has become a cultural center, an educational center, with the Olympic Park sitting in the middle of it and hosting many events across the year. Then we'll look at some numbers. For instance, these are quite really aspiring, I have to say. So the goal is to have 40,000 new jobs on and around the park by 2025. And as far as I'm aware, this is all going according to plan, if not ahead of the plan. In terms of housing, there are 24,000 new units with just under 100,000 people living in the planning area, which is called London. LLDC stands for London Legacy Development Corporation, an entity that was set up just for the purpose of running the legacy program after the London Olympic Games. The Olympic Park and the venues within it will be visited by 125 million people by 2031. And it has become, as I said, a culture and education district, 1.1 billion pounds investment with 1.5 billion return to local economy. So these are pretty good numbers, I have to say. On the contrary, we have the Rio 2016 example. Although the organizers had a really great legacy plan, when they actually bid to host the event, they were unable to materialize that plan. And just 2 years after the game, they are having big problems in terms of maintaining the venues and attracting people for new events, or increasing the quality of the people that live in the area. In terms of sports participation, obviously, watching major sporting events may inspire people to get involved in sports. It increases propensity to take part, the so-called trickle-down effect. It often creates role models, particularly for younger people. However, converting this interest and propensity into sustainable activity is more of a challenge. It is not so easy. Overall, there is actually little evidence of a positive long-term sporting benefit from hosting a major sporting event. Again, another example is London 2012, but this time it is in an area where they were not really successful, actually. So when London bid to host the Olympic Games, their aspiration was to use this event as a step change in participation. By 2015 and 2016, a very small overall increase was observed in participation in sport. And this positive association was generally only for those that were already active in terms of physical activity and sports participation. And in terms of the 16 to 25-year-olds, there were almost no change at all. So regardless of what the aspirations are, it is not so easy to achieve those aspired outcomes, so to speak. One moment, please. So what is the secret to achieving the legacy aspirations by leveraging the opportunity that the games bring? First of all, we need to keep in mind that legacy planning is not something that must be delayed until after the games. Legacy planning actually should start in the bidding phase with clear objectives in terms of why an aspiring host city wants to host that specific event. And it continues until long after the games. What is very critical is that these legacy objectives and the impact that we want games to create is clearly defined and documented. Because if you remember the life cycle that we looked at, we are talking about good 10, 15, 20 years period, you know, and sometimes priorities change, people change, and these clearly defined and documented goals is going to provide continuity regardless of the people and the changing priorities. Secondly, because of the diverse nature of legacy objectives, an aspiring host city must engage large group of stakeholders and manage them diligently. And the third one is about creating a dedicated legacy agency. We call this a sunset organization. We call this a sunset because they have a set lifespan, right? They are created for about 20 years, 25 years, and then they disappear. It is why they are called a sunset agency. One example is the London Legacy Development Corporation, which will be in place for nearly 30 years. And the fourth one is to commit. The government and or all the sort of stakeholders that are involved in this must commit to realize the legacy benefits. Now, again, this is easier said than done. There are too many common challenges which are faced by pretty much sort of majority of the host cities. In summary, these are this can be summarized as follows: deploying all resources to delivery of the event and leaving limited or no focus on legacy. Competing interests of different agencies in legacy planning, implementation, and governance. I mean, I cannot emphasize this enough. You know, this is probably the most important problem, I have to say. The third one is losing focus once the games are over. Okay. Changing priorities of the government institutes over time. And I mean, for instance, I am from Turkey, right? Such as Dr. Cem Tünaz, also Cem Tünaz is from Turkey. We all know that, you know, there is the political continuity is a major problem. As soon as the government changes, whatever has been done by the previous governments, you know, they forget about it and they want to do their own thing. And this is a big, big problem because, as I said, the legacy objectives can be achieved across the span of 5, 10, 15 years, right? So there should be some level of continuity. And in most countries, there is a big problem of discipline to run long-term programs, right? This requires discipline and commitment. And on that note, I would like to briefly talk to you about the Lima 2019 Pan American Games. So the capital of Peru hosted these games back in 2019. It is the second largest major sporting event in the world by the number of participants. They were facing sort of 3 years out of the games, they were facing some big problems. They didn't make a lot of progress. And because of the rigid deadline, unmovable deadline, they found themselves under immense pressure. And also the country had some structural problems, particularly around contracting and procurement. There was some level of sort of corruption, and therefore people were not really wanting to take responsibility, you know, from sort of managing the supply chain or, you know, the procurement itself. And the other problem, perhaps the biggest problem, was the lack of local expertise in delivering a major program at the scale of the Pan American Games. So they actually choose to do something that was very unusual to date. What they did, they came to the British government and said, look, you host major sporting events pretty much every year, and London 2012 was a success. Is there a way of sort of getting support, from you? And normally what happens is that in this kind of instances, countries sign what we call a memorandum of understanding. It is not really a binding agreement. It is binding to some extent. But the partner country is not so much involved in the delivery itself. Whereas in this case, there was a proper contract in place, what is called the government-to-government agreement, where the British government actually became a delivery partner to the event. And by this, what Peru ensured was that there was a proper knowledge of transfer between the UK, from the UK to Peru. That there were robustly designed procurement tools, procurement procedures, systems, transparency, and the contracting strategy. And they also ensured that there was some technical assurance, both in terms of infrastructure development and operational delivery. And similar to the London Legacy Development Corporation, they agreed to set up a dedicated legacy agency. And they began their legacy planning long before the event actually ended. And this legacy agency is still in place, and it is responsible for driving the hard aspects of legacy, which are the sort of facilities, the managing facilities, maintenance, etc., as well as facilitating the soft legacy. Soft legacy is obviously tourism, the economy, sports participation. So they are basically playing a facilitator role among the stakeholders that would be primarily responsible for delivering the certain aspects of soft legacy. And because they have built this local capability through the events, they found themselves really lucky enough, because what they did, their COVID-19 response team consisted of the people who actually manage the games. And similarly, they follow the similar approach to the Pan American Games for the regeneration program that they are running for the areas which were severely affected by El Nino, which happened in 2017. And by no surprise, they will be using this local capability for future major sporting events. So I would say that outside of maybe, how to say, developed countries, I think Lima is the best example in terms of how to use a major sporting event for achieving sustainable impact, so to speak. Rita, how are we doing time-wise?
Yes, you still have actually 8 more minutes to go.
Okay. Right, okay. Look, I would like to maybe skip the measuring bit and go to what makes a successful city then. Okay? Because I think this is really important for us to know, and maybe aspiring host cities to consider, right? This definition that I have listed on the slides is by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, okay? And I agree with the way they have defined it. Main attributes of a successful city are, in my view, diversity, good governance, a skilled workforce, quality of life, connectivity, physical renewal, existence of a culture of innovation, and existence of a business-friendly culture. I am sure you know there can be, we can put some sort of sub-bullet points underneath each of these, but I think these, 8, 10 bullet points summarize it fairly, okay? Now, I think one of the things we should be looking at key issues and challenges. One of the biggest problem is the cost of bidding and hosting. when you look at the events that has taken place over the past 10, 12 years, I mean, the cost of bidding went as high as $50 million, right? And actually the staging of an event, we are talking about good tens of billions. So these are massive, massive problems, and it actually creates a lot of skepticism towards these events. The other problem associated with the cost of bidding and hosting is cost overruns. At 156% in real terms, the Olympics have the highest average cost of overrun of any type of mega project. I'm not talking about like major sporting events. I'm talking about mega projects in terms of like aviation, infrastructure, etc. This is massive, right? And it provides a lot of credibility questions. Moreover, cost overrun is found in all games without exception. For no other type of mega project, this is the case. In every single major event, there is a cost overrun, you know. And 47% of these games have cost overruns above 100%. This is, again, a massive problem. Not surprisingly, this brings us to the public perception of these events. As with these problems, there is increased skepticism towards major sporting events. I mean, there are plenty of recent examples whereby a public sort of voted or sort of vetoed their host city from bidding for a particular event because of primarily monetary concerns. Issues of scale is another matter. These events keep getting bigger and bigger. It provides sustainability problems, and it makes it even more difficult to use these events for a positive impact. Obviously, we are not the only ones who are aware of these problems, who are aware of these key issues. The event owners themselves acknowledge these, and they try to address these problems, such as the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. Under Thomas Bach, the President Thomas Bach, they came up with Agenda 2020 and the new norm report, which provides for over 100 reforms or initiatives aimed at reducing the cost of bidding and hosting the Olympic Games by up to $1 billion US. And this was first introduced for Paris 2024. As far as I am aware, it is working, but obviously we will have to keep observing as this is still fairly new. Another aspect that we need to be aware of is this is not necessarily something bad, but it is a sort of trend that we need to be mindful of. The changing profile of audience, as well as the way that they consume sport, triggered the event owners to include new formats and sports into their programs, such as climbing, surfing, FIBA 3-on-3 basketball, so on and so forth. And there was a debate, I think, in the lead up to Tokyo 2020 about the dance sport becoming an Olympic discipline. I mean, why not? The other problem is theory versus reality, right? We talked about the failure of Brazil in terms of making use of the facilities after the Olympic Games. You know their state, but then when you look at the game, when you look at a news article in 2019, it states that there was a significant economic benefit to host city. The problem about these kind of studies is that the outcome of these economic impact studies, in most cases, align with the objectives of the people or organization that commissioned these studies, right? It is not ethical, but it is something that we need to be aware of, right? So in conclusion, the challenges that are facing the sector are public opinion in relation to expenditure levels, which leads to referendums and protests, cost overruns, the displacement effect, in the sense that certain part of a society having to move from where they work or where they live because of these specific major events. Maybe there's a new regeneration project and they are displaced, etc. So this creates a lot of problems. And post-event downturn, particularly in terms of economy. And the fifth one is impact of political changes on post-event legacy, which brings up the continuity problem. The benefits can be increased by hosting the right events in the town, city, or region. So the aspiring host cities need to assess carefully what event is actually good for them. Developing events which are sufficiently special to attract visitors from outside the town to enable some economic activity. And thirdly, developing the supply chain to ensure that the spending actually stays in the country, right? It doesn't go to another country. And the cities need to select the right events to bid for, as we have just discussed. They must honestly evaluate and then challenge weak perceptions of the city image. They need to establish a structure with responsibility for legacy implementation from the start. So the legacy agency, the sunset organization that I mentioned. And they must use the event to improve political and cultural relationships with other countries. So with this, I conclude the main section of my presentation. I would like to actually finish by bringing to your attention a new trend in the UK about the social value of sport. So obviously, there is significant awareness of the fact that sports participation and physical activity brings a lot of health and social benefits. But there is a need to build a robust evidence base around the specific benefits in order to build an investment case from the government or any other funding body and plan for further improvement. So this is basically about putting a dollar value against a value, social value generated by every dollar that is spent in the sport, right? The UK government came up with a sporting future strategy in 2016, where they emphasized 5 areas to focus on in terms of creating social impact. These include physical well-being, mental well-being, individual development, and social and community development. And basically, there is a certain methodology in place which helps organization define how much social value they generate. For details, you can see an example report by Swim England. You can basically Google it, value of swimming, it would appear. You don't need to make note of the URL. But I think for those who are interested, I think this is a really nice way of looking at it. And this is, I think, where the sport is going. Because imagine justifying how much value you create in terms of reducing diabetes or reducing mental health. This directly has an impact on the amount of money or the amount or on the cost to the government, on this. So if you can come up with a nice business case as a sports organization, you can actually go to the government and say, look, instead of spending on this area, just invest in sports, and we are going to reduce your spending by 3-fold, 4-fold, 5-fold. With this, I conclude my presentation. I hope you found it useful. Any questions, please do let me know.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing different perspective on major events. So actually, they show that the diversity as well as the beauty of sport itself, this is really sport management, which is not only limited to athletes and sport. Okay, so I would like to ask permission probably to read a very short summary of your presentation in Bahasa Indonesia before we move forward to the question and answer session. Okay, Bapak Ibu yang terhormat, dalam presentasinya, Mr. Onin banyak membahas sudut pandang beliau selaku praktisi event-event olahraga besar. Mr. Onen mengkategorisasikan major events berdasarkan jumlah olahraga yang ditampilkan dan representasi geografis dari negara-negara yang berpartisipasi. Dan kemudian beliau juga membahas bahwa major events bukan hanya penyelenggaraan 2 minggu atau 10 hari saja, melainkan sebuah event besar berbiaya mahal yang meninggalkan banyak sekali jejak legasi berupa dampak, kemampuan dalam menciptakan perubahan, manfaat jangka panjang, sebuah katalis, serta juga kepastian adanya proses keberlanjutan atau sustainability. Maka kita perlu memahami pilar legasi berupa dampak regenerasi perkotaan yang memang akan mungkin terjadi di mana terdapat beberapa peluang untuk proses proyek pembangunan perkotaan dan juga bisa sebagai akselerator terhadap tenggat waktu yang biasanya kaku serta adanya kesamaan visi. Namun kita juga perlu bersiap untuk analisa efek regenerasi jangka panjang, kemudian hal-hal yang bersifat simbolis dan mungkin temporal dalam sebuah evolusi kota, dan tentu saja ini tidak sama dengan pembaruan perkotaan. Pilar legasi lainnya berupa partisipasi olahraga dan aktivitas fisik yang hadir saat masyarakat terinspirasi oleh event olahraga yang diselenggarakan dan meniru role modelnya. Beliau juga menyampaikan dalam kesimpulannya adanya tantangan yang akan dihadapi seperti opini publik terhadap tingkat pengeluaran, adanya nanti referendum atau protes-protes yang terjadi, pembengkakan biaya, efek adanya perpindahan, kemudian penurunan pasca acara, apakah masih sustain atau tidak, kemudian dampak perubahan politik pada nanti apa yang terjadi sebagai legacy pasca acara. Sementara manfaat yang dapat ditingkatkan, yaitu dengan cara menyelenggarakan acara yang tepat di sebuah kota atau wilayah, kemudian mengembangkan acara yang cukup khusus atau spesifik untuk dapat menarik pengunjung dari luar kota atau luar wilayah, serta mengembangkan rantai pasokan untuk memastikan bahwa pengeluaran-pengeluaran yang terjadi pada akhirnya nanti bisa menguntungkan kota ataupun wilayah. Okay, so again, I can see that someone is raising his hand, so probably I'm going to invite Professor Chamtinas to propose your question, please.
Hi, thank you very much. Hi again. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. So your international expertise is uncomparable. Seriously, you work in quite many different regions of the world, and I am sure you deal with a lot of different challenges and also tasks. So I just wanted to ask you something. I mean, the example what you gave from London. So I mean, also to me, it is one of the best examples how they approached and how they have created the legacy plan, and they have been also quite aware what they had to do even before hosting the event. So I just wanted to ask you, how is this understanding in the other regions of the world? I mean, because you work in America, so you work in Asia. So do you think that these emerging nations, so these developing nations, are putting enough consideration to the legacy aspect? And are they really aiming to create a legacy out of hosting sport mega events? Thank you.
Jem, thank you very much for this great question. Yeah, I mean, I have been lucky to be involved in projects in probably like 3 continents, and to see different ways of thinking and the way they approach to hosting major sporting events. I guess there are a couple of things. One is the experience of hosting a major sporting events leads or creates a certain culture in these societies and decision makers, right? Like UK, like London, I mean, they host many events and they know that they need to come up with a purpose or justification in terms of why they want to host their event. Similarly, like Tokyo, they had a robust legacy plan as well. So this experience with mega projects is one thing. The second problem is the discipline of running a long-term program is another bit. Political continuity is another thing that we need to keep in mind. And the resource allocation and management is another thing. So most of the time, the host cities spent most of their resources on delivery, leaving very limited resources on the legacy itself. I think I mean, I have to be honest with you, apart from Lima, the government of Peru, I have not seen in recent times, at least, a sort of developing nation which puts too much emphasis or dedication on achieving legacy benefits, so to speak. I mean, going back to the Asian Games 2018 in Indonesia, I mean, I was traveling back and forth. I could see the level of pressure they felt under, you know, the decision makers in terms of the event getting nearer, and that they haven't done much, you know, in terms of preparing for the event itself. They had very limited capacity to actually focus on the legacy benefits. So I hope they learned from the Asian Games, and when they will hopefully host the Olympic Games, they will put enough consideration into this. But when we look at the Rio 2016 example, documenting everything doesn't actually mean a lot unless you really deliver it, right? I mean, Brazil had a really nice, spot-on legacy plan, but they were unable to materialize it. So I hope this answers your question, Jem.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So is there any more question coming from the audience? Because we are still having around 8 minutes. Okay, Pak. Okay, Dr. Agus Mahendra, I think, is raising his hand.
Yeah, I'm confirmed. I'm raising my hand.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Ageman, is that right?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Thank you very much for insightful perspective regarding the legacy benefit from major event. And I would like to connect your presentation into to what we are planning to go in our country. That is, we are going to, let's say, to bid for hosting Olympic game in 2034 or 32. Yeah. For me, it's kind of full that our government is trying to get the opportunity to become Olympic host, because everything that you already mentioned in your presentation is already in place in our country. I mean, not already in place. I mean, because let's say in terms of the capability in seeing what is the benefit from major event in terms of legacy benefit, we don't have it. And then in terms of the supporting factor like sport industry, we don't have it yet in our country, because I could see that, let's say, seeing the benefit of major event hosting is closely related to the sport industry, how we could sell, how we could, let's say, market our major event to the industry sector, to those who are, let's say, who will get a strong benefit from the major event. Now, in this sense, I don't see that our country is ready to do that, because let's say in the very basic sense, we don't have the capability in selling our sport, and it's reflected. I mean, yeah, you can see clearly that our sport is not based on how to make their sport, let's say, must or could involve so many persons into it. Our sport only based on, let's say, our national sport federation only focus on how, if they have already chosen, let's say, some athletes, some potential athletes, they are going to concentrate only for improving this elite athlete to become international athlete in terms of their performance. But our sport federation even it's in national level, do not have the capacity of selling, or let's say try to get so many people get involved in our sport. So let's say in basketball, in tennis, in other, especially let's say for sport just like gymnastic or swimming, who's not intrinsically strengthened by the intrinsic enjoyment in doing that, it is still a problem. So I think for me, because you from the picture and from the explanation, you already or often come to Indonesia. I think I would insist you to, let's say, to give kind of recommendation to our government leader that it is not yet the time for us to become a host, especially for, let's say, Olympic Games. It is not the time yet, because we are going to get so many, let's say, well, apa Bu Rita, kerugian itu.
Loss.
Yeah,
Loss.
we are going to have so many loss especially in economy, if we just try to go to become the host of the Olympic Games, even it is in 2030 something. It's not time yet. So that's all I think that I'm going to say to you.
Thank you.
Please
Thank
help
you.
us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahendra. If I may just make a sort of quick comment on this. I think we need to first understand whether the government is genuinely interested in hosting this event,
Okay.
or are they using this bidding argument for PR purposes, try to put Indonesia on the map. The second bit is that you have clearly articulated all the problems that your country is facing, right?
Yeah.
If Indonesia comes with a robust legacy plan and the strategy in terms of how they will execute that plan, the Olympic Games actually may work, because now Indonesia hosted explained interest for the 2032 Olympics that is now being awarded. Now they have expressed interest for 2036, which means that there are 14 years, right? So there is enough time to do certain things. And in the lead up to 2036, Indonesia can actually host smaller events in preparation for the big event, right? Use it as a milestone and come up with a plan. The problem is whether Indonesia has the, I don't want to say capability, but the will to execute such a long-term plan. This would be the big question mark for me, And I mean, if there is any need from the government or anybody else that are involved, to discuss more about this, I would obviously be more than happy to, to help as much as I can.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a very generous offer indeed that you already told us. So probably someone coming from university can talk about this more. And then hopefully the word coming from Dr. Mahendra is going to be overcome. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So this is really different. And then I believe that probably some of the participants would like to contact you after this. So probably they will still have some more questions. So hopefully you don't mind with that kind of arrangement.
Oh, yeah, it would be my pleasure.
Okay, so again, thank you so much for being with us here today. Okay.
Thank you for and all the best for the rest of the conference.
Okay, bye. Thank you. Bye. So we're going to move forward to our last session. Actually, this is our third session. So we are going to have Professor Lisa Barnett coming from Deakin University, Australia, who will be talking more on sports meets health, understanding the importance of self-perception of children's physical literacy in swimming and water safety. So it's not a coincidence that actually at the end of the presentation coming from Mr. The last presentation, actually, we're talking more about the swimming itself. So can we have Professor Barnett. Okay. Hey, oops. Okay, what happened? Okay, wait.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Hi. It's a good afternoon to you, right?
No, it's actually good evening. So selamat malam and good afternoon to you. So selamat sore. And thank you very much for inviting me today to the committee.
Actually, this is our honor to have you here with us today. Okay, so Professor, please allow me to read your CV before probably you can have your own time to do your presentation. Okay, so Professor Barnett was one of the 3 lead investigators to develop the Australian physical literacy definition and standard, funded through Sport Australia. Developing measurement in physical literacy is a key interest area, and Professor Barnett is globally recognized in the area of youth motor competence. This is coming from National Citizen Report and Web of Science and has over 150 peer-reviewed publications. Wow. So Professor research interests are in the development, implementation, evaluation, and long-term follow-up of physical activity intervention in children and adolescents. A key interest is the role actual and perceived fundamental movement skills ability has to physical activity behavior. Okay, so without further ado, Professor Barnett, you will have 30 minutes for your presentation, please.
Thank you so much. I'll just get my screen organized.
Okay.
Right, do you have the right version of the screen?
Yes, we are.
Fabulous. All right, thank you so much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be here today. So I'm going to take a bit of a different path today. So you've heard from some very big picture perspectives of sport, which have been very interesting. And I'm going to take a little bit of a diversion. So I hope you find it interesting. So I'm going to start by making the case for a focus on water safety. And hopefully, as I do that, you'll start to see why this does connect back to sport. But first of all, I'm going to focus on water safety. So I'm going to take a detour here. So we've been talking a lot about sport. I'm going to take a little path off to the side and then come back again. And hopefully you can come on that journey with me. I'm going to start with drowning. So drowning, this is the World Health Organization report, and it's about drowning prevention and particularly focused on Southeast Asia and also the Western Pacific regions. This is a really important issue. So Southeast Asia is a real hotspot for drowning. So you can see in that pie chart there that 31% of the share of global drowning deaths by the World Health Organization regions were from Southeast Asia. So this is a really important issue for the region that I believe most of your participants are in today. It's a leading cause of children's death. So for children and young people, which is my area of research interest, the highest drowning rates are among children aged 1 to 4 years, and that's followed by children aged 5 to 9 years. And in Southeast Asia, drowning as a cause of death ranks, second for 10 to 14-year-olds, third for 5 to 9-year-olds, and 6th for those aged 15 to 24. So really big, important issue. I'm going to present a little bit more around this just to set the scene for what I want to talk about. And drowning is everyone's business. And this is where I'm going to come back around to sport again. So it's not only a public health issue. So you might have thought of drowning in terms of injury prevention, which it is, and squarely in the domain of health. But it really is a challenge for everybody. And it's a socioeconomic development challenge. And it's a massive, important thing that affects human capital and economic burden. And it's really important for the agenda for sustainable development, including the Sustainable Development Goals on health and well-being, and on quality education and development, and on sustainable cities and communities. So I think coming from a sport perspective, we need to also be thinking about this important issue. So if we think of it in terms of sport and health goals and start bringing it back round to the topic of this conference, it drowning prevention, injury prevention, it relates to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have sport as a vehicle for the development of positive youth. And swimming is one of those sports that we think about, but swimming also has that potential to act in terms of drowning prevention. So in this way, it's a really important sport and one that can meet numerous goals. And that's why I'd like to focus on swimming today. We know that some of the font in here is a little small, but just to summarize, drowning is preventable. Now, there are a lot of different aspects that contribute to drowning. The ones that I've highlighted there in the yellow are the ones that I think relate most to a sport perspective. So the inability to swim and the lack of water safety awareness and risky behavior around water. These are the things that we can impact perhaps if we look at swimming and sports, and we especially focus from that developmental perspective of people down here who don't know how to swim. We can take actions around this. We can teach water safety skills to school-aged children. We can use structured, safety-tested curriculums and a safe training environment. We can have trained instructors. We can work on water safety awareness and skills, and we can use multi-sectorial collaborations to strengthen our platforms and partnerships. So this is where sport might be able to get involved with the other agencies that are concerned with injury prevention and work together on these goals. By educating people on how to swim and water safety, we'll be meeting some of the goals of drowning and injury prevention, but also enhancing skills from that developmental perspective. And some children or adults will continue on and perhaps eventually become elite in their sport. So it's really starting at that base and working on a number of the Sustainable Development Goals and still potentially reaching some important elite sport goals. There's also particular aspects that can be focused on in research. So there's priority areas that could come up in your area that as researchers you can uncover and start to address. What can you work on? And hopefully some of the rest of my presentation might spark some ideas that you may not have thought about before in relation to sport and swimming and injury prevention. So now that I've made a little bit of a case, hopefully, for water safety, I'm now going to move into talking about what physical literacy is and also about your self-perception, what you think about yourself and how that relates to water safety. So back on the path again. So our definition of physical literacy in Australia is that it's about lifelong learning. So it's not just about children, it's about the learning that we go through our entire life from the moment that we're born to the moment that we pass on. And it's about the learning that we undertake with movement and through movement and physical activity. The idea of possessing physical literacy is that it's going to help you maintain those positive physical activity behaviors. And it's more than just the physical, it's the psychological, the social, which one of our speakers earlier talked about, and the cognitive and health and well-being benefits. So we go on a physical literacy journey. We develop our skills, we develop our psychological attributes that help us engage in physical activity. But it's not a linear journey. We might go along for some time, we might have an injury, it's a setback. Things have to change. We have to rely on our psychological attributes to help us through. We might decide we don't like team sports anymore. We like individual sports. So there's the social aspects that need to be considered. And there's all the cognitive aspects. We have to understand the tactics, the rules, how to engage. That's all important as well. We might have a baby and a family, and that might change our engagement in physical activity. So this is why physical literacy is a lifelong journey, and it changes and ebbs and flows throughout your life. So whilst we need to focus on the environment to get the population active, we also need to focus on the individual, because we can have a really good environment that will help facilitate physical activity, but we still need that person to have some ability and confidence and desire within themselves to be active. And that's why a focus on physical literacy is important. So we might want to think about it in terms of competence plus your confidence plus your motivation might enable you to be active, and we might be able to say that you're physically literate. So physical literacy is the skills, the knowledges, and the behavior that give us confidence and motivation to lead active lives. And it's just as important to have the psychological, social, and the cognitive as it is to have the physical. And it can be conceptualized like this. This next slide shows you in detail in terms of our Australian physical literacy framework. You might not be able to read every single element within the 4 domains, but you'll understand the idea. So underneath the physical domain, we have things like your movement skills, your motor skills, your object manipulation, can you throw and catch a ball, and fitness aspects such as your speed or your muscular endurance. If we look at the psychological domain, some of the things I've already talked about, your confidence, your motivation, how you believe about your physical self, your self-perception. The social domain is about how you build relationships. Can you collaborate? Can you work in a team? Can you understand the ethics of what's involved? Can you appreciate other ways of doing things through different societies and cultures? And the cognitive aspects I've also mentioned. Do you understand the rules? Do you understand the tactics? Have you got strategy and planning? So these are all the elements of our framework. But how to measure that? It's really quite complex because it's a lot of things to measure. It's 30 different elements within 4 domains, and it's complex. But one important thing to think about is perception. So how you believe about your skills and your abilities is actually quite an important driver of what you do. And in young children, which has been the focus for a lot of my research, positive perceptions, if you think you can do something, you're more likely to be active. So it's important to be able to measure your perception of your physical literacy, especially in children. Now I'm going to bring it back round to the water aspect again, in case you were wondering how this actually connects. So when we first talk about land skills, so land-based movement skills like running, throwing, catching, if I think I'm good and then I get out there in the playground and start playing or playing with my friends, then it's good to have a high perception. But if we talk about water-based skills, this could have dire consequences. If I think I'm really good, but I'm not, and I jump into the water and I end up in trouble and it's a risk for drowning. So it's important then for the water that my perception of myself is actually accurate, because if it's inaccurate, it could lead to issues. So there's quite a big difference between the land-based skills and the role of perception and water-based skills. But there's not a lot of research out there. There's not a lot of research on how we perceive our own water safety and swimming skills, how children perceive them, how that's related to their actual skills. And this is also extended to parents. So what I believe my children can do isn't necessarily aligned with reality. So that's quite important as well for the parent to really understand a child's capabilities so they don't put them in risky situations, or they can ensure that they keep their children safe. So this is why it's important to focus on perception. It's important to focus on these skills and physical literacy, but it's also important to have that focus on the water. So when we're trying to assess how well somebody can swim or their water safety ability, how would we do that in a school context? How would we do that in terms of quality assessment? If we could actually run them all through a swimming test, that will give us our answer, and then we'll know how well they can swim or whether they have any water safety techniques. But many schools don't have swimming pools or access to swimming pools or swimming teachers or the ability to be able to do that. So how do they find out? They often ask parents to report on their child's swimming. Maybe there's a camp coming up or an activity that involves the water, and the teachers and the school need to understand ability. But the parent may also not have a very good idea of what their child can do. They could also ask the children themselves. They may or may not have some idea, and there's not been very good measures for children to be able to respond to that type of question. So we wanted to think of that and develop a measure where children could respond, and maybe parents could use it too to try and highlight their child's ability. So now I'm going to move into measurement of perceived water skill competence in children. So before I go specifically into water skill competence, I wanted to start with talking about development of an instrument to measure children's perception of their physical literacy. So we developed this scale for Sport Australia, and it was matched. Each question is matched to one of the physical literacy elements. So this was the slide I showed you earlier. So each question matches to one of these elements. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to give you the examples that were based in the water, because two of these elements we situated in water scenarios. We tried to have a whole lot of different scenarios. So some were sport-based, some were in the home, some were in the school, some were in nature, but I'm going to just focus on the two that were in water. So the child is shown these two images, and then they're read aloud what the wording. So some children think about where it's safe to swim before they go in the water. Other children do not think about where it's safe to swim before they go in the water. So in Australia, we have these yellow and red flags to show where it is safe to swim. So the idea is that you need to swim between the flags. And in these two pictures, we have the orange bunny. In the first picture, they're racing into where it is safe to swim. In the next picture, they're not thinking about where it's safe, and they're running off in a different direction. So this is about the ability to evaluate risk and safety. So the child picks which one is more like them, and then they need to say whether it's a lot like them or a bit like them. So you end up with a 4-point scale. Here is the other water scenario. Some children think about following rules, like not to do a bomb in the pool. A bomb's where you jump in and you make a really big splash and all the water comes out, and other children get water in their mouth, and it's usually not allowed in our swimming pools. Other children do not think about following rules, and they would do a bomb in the pool. So this is about their cognitive understanding of rules and what they understand and what they choose or are more likely to do. So there are only 2 scenarios out of all 30 that have a water-based context. So when we tested the instrument, the takeaway points from that are that the responses, when we tested it with the information we have on actual skill, actually do align. So for example, boys do think they're better at more of the fitness elements, and actual data shows that they usually are fitter and stronger. So that aligns to reality. Use of this instrument can help programming actions for children in sport and education, because if you find out how children feel about themselves on those physical literacy elements, teachers and coaches can work with their programs and help develop those parts of the children. Rather than just focusing on the physical, it might help a coach to identify, oh, they're doing well with their skills, but maybe not so well on the social elements, or not so well on understanding the rules. And like I said, 2 items have swimming contexts, which could be relevant to measuring someone's perception of their swimming abilities in those contexts. Now I want to move to a scale which is just focused on swimming and water safety, and give you a little bit of information on that. And I'm going to be presenting this at a conference next week, a physical education conference that we're having in Australia. That's a World Congress. So what we're interested in with this assessment is if the scores for their perception align with their actual swimming and water safety ability, then possibly teachers and others could assess children's water competence as a preliminary screening process. Now, caution, this is always going to be a guide. We don't want to ever assume that it's completely accurate because this is perception, but it could be used if there isn't a swimming pool or another way, and parent report could be used with it to try and get an idea of who might be at risk. So we aim to create a brief scale for children and test how well it was associated with their actual skills. So what we did is we went to an existing instrument, and which was much longer, and we picked out 4 scenarios that we thought were important to swimming and water safety. And those were the ones that we wanted to select for the brief scale. Now, this is an instrument that's already available. It's freely available, and it was produced by an international group that's part of the conference that we'll be presenting at next week. And it's designed for children to report their swimming and water safety competence for 17 different swimming scenarios. So it's designed for young children and not without them having to read. So it's a pictorial scale. So the top bit is just the description of the 3 levels, but the child has just showed the images and they need to just select which one is like them. And you can see one is not very able, one they're getting the skill, and one they're quite good at the skill. So these are all fundamental water skills. This first one is about being able to tread water and keep yourself afloat in the water. But we know from scale development that having more than 3 response options can help you distinguish between competent and highly competent children. So if there's only 3 options to choose from, we might get a ceiling effect with children all in one area, and it might help to have more potential options. So we wanted to use this scale and alter it to add an extra option, and also not use the whole scale, because remember it was 17 items and we wanted to reduce it to 4 items. So what we did first is we extended the scale. So you can see here again, this is the same one with treading water, but we've added an extra layer of competency here. So the last picture, that one that I'm calling D, they're actually got their clothes on and they need to still keep afloat with their clothes on. So we had the 4 scenarios. So one of them is the treading water, which is in this picture. One is retrieving an object in deep water. So this is about diving down and getting the object and bringing it back up again. One is swimming on the front. So basically overarm or freestyle, and one is swimming on the back. So backstroke. And the last one is the treading water. So you don't need to read all of this, but what we did is we matched their responses to these perception, which I've just showed you, with their actual swim levels. So the swim levels were from A to G, and A is little or no experience, and G was really quite competent swimmer. They could swim 250 meters continuously using efficient techniques in a number of strokes. So there were all the different levels of swimming, and these were particular to the swimming provider that we used. So these were measured in Victoria in Australia. So just a little bit of background, few children in our sample actually got higher than D, and one criteria of the level D was 15 meters of backstroke. So those levels were just collapsed, and no child reached level D, which is being able to swim continuously. So these children were all recruited through a summer vacation program that's run every year in Victoria, where they can do a 1-week intensive swimming. So some children might have had lessons throughout the year. Some children might only go into that 1-week intensive swimming. If they were very good swimmers, they were probably unlikely to enter into this program. So if they were already in a squad and already doing swimming as a development sport, they were unlikely. So this program is going to be more geared towards lower end beginner swimmers. So the parents were recruited if their children had participated in at least one swim intensive week-long program. It could have been 2 weeks, but at least 1 week in the last year. And the age was around 7 years old, the mean age. So we had the perceptions of 139 children, and we had the certificate data to match that. Either the certificate data based on what they were according to what their parent thought they were at the beginning, or according to what the swimming provider entered in at the end. So that number 30 is much lower because the swimming provider didn't enter in all the details into the database. And what we found is that there really was quite moderate positive associations between their swim level at the start and their perception. So even when we adjusted for their sex and their age, higher perceived skill was still moderately significantly associated with the skill levels. So this tells us actually that children did have quite a reasonable idea of their swimming level, which means we could potentially use this scale to gain an idea of how swimming and water competent children are. So we have got some evidence now for the use of a 4-item developmentally appropriate scale to assess child perceived swimming competence. Because this is brief and it's only 4 items, it could have utility for large-scale use. It's important to remember, though, that some information is lost because the original scale was 17 items long, and there are more aspects of swimming and water safety than just swimming on the front and back and treading water and retrieving an object. So it can't completely represent a child's ability, but it may give an indication. And if parents could potentially complete something like that as well, it may have some utility in terms of trying to identify children that may be at risk. We need further research on reliability and validity, but it's an interesting and potential start. So just to acknowledge there some of the people that were involved in developing that from the swimming organisation and the university. So I just want to bring it back round now to where to from here. So I started with making a case for a focus on water safety, even though we've been talking about sport. So I took a little detour off to the side. Then I talked broadly about physical literacy, and that physical literacy is not just about the land, it's also about your physical literacy on the water. And then I talked about self-perception and how that's really an important driver of physical activity on the land, but it's really important in relation to water safety as well, because it's important to know if we're accurate with our perception, because that could have really unfortunate consequences in terms of drowning if we're not accurate. Then I talked about how we might potentially measure perceived water competence. So where can we go from here? So I think swimming sports is a vehicle for development of positive use. So bringing it back round to the topic of your conference, I think developing children's physical literacy, including on the water, will assist to develop the whole person, their physical, cognitive, social, and psychological selves. And I think, therefore, you can see this focus as sport as a vehicle for the development of positive use. But I think as well as that, you could also address the important public health issue of drowning prevention. And if we can work in partnership across health and across sport and across different domains like the social domain as well and the cognitive domain, we've got more power to make things happen. So rather than staying in our siloed areas with sport here and health here and psychology here and social development over here and public health here, if we can actually bring it together where we might have different goals. You might be from an elite sports background and you might be interested in pushing that area, But to have success in the elite area, you need a huge bulk in the development area to be able to rise up. And if you have that base development and you're working on that at a population level, you might also be hitting injury prevention targets, which are really important. So I think my take-home points are, if you are in that elite sports area, can you think of expanding your focus to thinking about fundamental water skill competency and what that might help you with sport, but how it might also help those other pillars? Because these children might go on and participate. And likewise, anyway, this action is going to help reduce drownings, which is a really important issue. And what potential research endeavours might you be able to participate in your country? What are the important priorities there, and how could you go away and achieve it? And I think in terms of research, this is a really under-researched area, as I've said. So I think there's lots of scope for doing lots of really interesting work here. So I hope that I've excited some of you perhaps to go in a different direction than you might have planned to. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you so much for addressing this important issue in such punctual time, Professor Barnett. So as any other session, I would like to ask permission to read the brief summary first before we enter to the question and answer session. Baik Bapak Ibu yang terhormat, dalam presentasinya yang berjudul olahraga dalam pemenuhan aspek kesehatan, memahami pentingnya persepsi diri literasi fisik anak dalam berenang dan keselamatan air, Profesor Barnett mengungkapkan pentingnya studi kasus untuk fokus pada keamanan baik itu di air serta memahami pengukuran persepsi kompetensi olahraga berenang pada anak. Beliau banyak membahas mengenai kasus tenggelam pada anak serta bagaimana cara untuk mencegahnya melalui physical literasi yang mencakup keterampilan, pengetahuan, dan perilaku yang memberi kepercayaan diri dan motivasi untuk menjalani kehidupan yang aktif serta melibatkan pembelajaran yang holistik serta seumur hidup melalui gerakan dan aktivitas fisik. Beliau tadi juga membahas mengenai framework The Australian Physical Literacy Framework yang digunakan di Australia, yang memberikan manfaat kesehatan dan kesejahteraan baik secara fisik, psikologis, sosial, dan kognitif untuk semua warga Australia, serta beberapa contoh instrumen lainnya seperti asesmen kompetensi air atau berenang, kemudian PLC Quest, serta PSPWC4. Profesor Barnett memandang berenang sebagai sarana untuk pengembangan yang positif yang dapat membantu mengembangkan literasi fisik anak, termasuk nantinya ini akan membantu mengembangkan mereka menjadi manusia seutuhnya, baik secara fisik, kognitif, sosial, dan psikologis. Dengan demikian, renang atau olahraga air lainnya dapat dilihat sebagai olahraga sebagai sarana untuk pengembangan pemuda yang positif. Di akhir presentasinya, beliau mengangkat beberapa pertanyaan yang bisa kita renungkan bersama. Yang pertama adalah, bisakah Anda mengalihkan pemikiran tentang olahraga renang dari olahraga elit ke pengembangan kompetensi keterampilan air, dan kemudian anak-anak ini nantinya akan dapat terus berpartisipasi dalam olahraga renang, namun terlepas dari itu semua, kita juga perlu fokus pada tindakan yang bisa membantu mengurangi kasus tenggelam. Maka apa upaya penelitian potensial yang sekiranya bisa membantu di negara Anda? Demikian yang bisa saya sampaikan. There are 2 persons are raising their hands. Okay, so the first one is our beloved Master of Ceremony. So, Miss Anira, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So, hello, Lisa.
Hello.
Okay, I found that the instrument is very interesting and easy to understand, which is the biggest problem that we experience while giving the instruments to children, that really difficult to make them understand if there's no picture. So there's just a statement about the instruments. And I think by using this instrument, children will be very easy to understand and answer the pictures according to their abilities. I also read your, I don't know what to say, PSD offerings, yes, regarding this reducing drowning, understanding factors with which contribute to risk and targeting those at risk. I wonder that if there is any collaboration, maybe in here we Indonesia can join with this this research, something like that. So is there any collaboration to do this research? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you very much, Anira, for your comment and question. I think you're right. The pictures on your first point, they help children in all countries to understand, because we often do surveys with children and I'm not really convinced at the sort of quality data we get, because they can't necessarily understand, and also it's not very interesting for them. So if we make them more engaging and interesting, we will make it a little bit more fun for the children, and we probably get more quality data. So I agree with you there. As for what's happening in your country in terms of injury prevention and drowning, I'm not aware of that, but I think it would be great to contact and see what was happening and see if a collaboration could be made. So I've just started a collaboration with Royal Lifesaving here, because I thought there's a connection between my research that I normally do in land-based movement skills and the water context. So this is a new area for me, and they're interested in those perspectives as well. So we're actually advertising for a PhD student at the moment to work on that. And one of our big issues in Australia is culturally and linguistically diverse communities. So people that come from other countries to Australia and they don't know how to swim, and their children don't know how to swim, but all of a sudden they're in an environment where swimming is quite common, and they are really at risk of drowning in Australia. So this is a really important group, and we are interested in working on that group in Australia. So there may be other endeavors in Indonesia, and I think it's a really important area and an exciting area, and there could be a way for you to be involved, but I'm not sure what that is off the top of my head right now.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, probably I will call upon Miss Gita Friskawati. Could you please, so probably because the video is not on yet, but then she's raising her hand.
Okay. Sorry, signal is not okay. Hello, my name is Gita Febria from a doctoral program. Good evening, Prof. Lisa Barnett.
Good evening, Gita. How are you?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm still pretty. It's a great presentation, I think, about DL sequence, the instrument for BL and in young children, and I have interest to develop physical literacy in early childhood, especially. So, is physical literacy can measure for early childhood? And the one question is how we can make the physical activity program for early childhood education to get early physical literacy. What's to be considered for it? It's my question.
Okay, thank you for your question. It was a little hard for me to hear, but I think you're talking about early childhood. Is that right?
Yes, early childhood, I think.
Yeah, so there are some quite good early childhood programs out there. So maybe if you contacted me afterwards, I could let you know. There's a big program in Australia that's training early childhood teachers and physical education teachers. It's called KIDDO, KIDDO. So I think there are some good strategies that you might be able to take on and use. They have a lot of online resources, and maybe some of them could be useful for Indonesia. So I might be able to point you in the right direction for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, bro.
Okay, thank you so much for your question and your answer too. Okay, is there any more question coming from the audience? Actually, we still have plenty of time for this question and answer. I would like to invite everyone in this room. Probably, should you have any question or something to discuss relating to the topics that has been brought. Actually, things like this drowning things, which has actually happened recently. It's not about the early childhood kids. So actually, it's a teenager, it's adolescent actually. So coming from the son of our governor, so just happened. And actually, he's a very good swimmer. But then things like that still happening in Bern, right? So yeah, we cannot avoid things that could happen. What really happened in the river, something like that. So do you have any comments? So because actually he's trained but then things like this keep on going. So is there any comments?
I do have a comment. I'm not sure about the situation you're talking about specifically, but it is quite interesting, that comment of someone who does know how to swim, but drowning can still happen. So yes, there are other influences, and often with adolescents or young men, there can be alcohol involved, which is a contributing factor. But the other thing that's interesting is that we can't just focus on swimming confidence. We also have to focus on water safety, because we can have quite elite swimmers. So for example, my son used to do swimming as a sport, and they were very good swimmers, but they'd take the children to the beach once a year, and they had never been to the beach. So they were only used to swimming in the environment of a swimming pool. They were very elite. They went in races. Some of them were even doing state-based trials, but they were not at all used to open water. And they didn't have those water safety skills. So even though they were very good swimmers, they were used to wearing a goggles in a very controlled environment. It's very different, as you said, in a river, in a dam, in open water, with rough sea, with rips, and all these things people don't know how to deal with. So even though they might be a good swimmer, their salt gets in their eyes, they're thrown, they don't know how to read the surf, they don't know where it's safe to go in or where it isn't safe to go in. So that's why we can't just focus on the sport aspects of swimming. We also have to focus on the water safety and how to understand the river and the ocean. So I think, and also the contextual factors of whether there's alcohol, peer pressure, safety on boats, and all those other issues that go on.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. So yes, probably about the water knowledge itself, right? So what we need to do, we need to prepare during actually this is the environmental events, right? So when he swims in the river and probably the tide's coming, so so he didn't expect it at all. So probably that's what happened. So thank you so much for that explanation. That makes sense, actually. So thank you for being with us. So is there any more question coming from the participant, or can we conclude? So probably I could ask to the master of ceremony, but can we do? Okay. Is it okay for us to conclude the session?
Yes, all right. Yes, well, thank you very much for having me. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih. Selamat malam.
Selamat malam, selamat petang. Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the session. Once again, I would like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to all the speakers for your concise and fruitful presentation. Now it's time for me to pass over the session to our Master of Ceremony, Miss Anira. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ms. Rita, for full session, and thank you for all respected keynote speakers. To conclude today's conference, please allow me to announce some points. First, we already said due to exit survey from the link provided in the chat room. Please make sure that you write your name correctly, because the data will use as certificate for participant at this conference. Last but not least, I would like to invite all of you to switch on your video, so we will take a group pictures. Okay. Okay, so now we have 4 slides. Please switch on your camera, and we will begin with the first screen. With my count, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the second one. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the third one. 3, 2, 1. And the last one. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This is the end of today's conference. We will meet again tomorrow for parallel session. Thank you for your participating today, and see you tomorrow. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Welcome to the Sport Education Study Program, School of Postgraduate, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. The Master's Sports Education Study Program has started accepting new students since 1997. And the Doctoral Sports Education Study Program has started accepting new students since 2005. So this is our beloved campus.
Welcome to Sport Education Study Program, School of Postgraduate, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia.
The vision is pioneers in excellence in the implementation of master's and doctoral sports education programs and produces graduates who are professional, globally minded and internationally competitive in 2024. Both sport education study programs, Magister, and Doctor have a national accreditation, and international certified by ISO 9001-2015. That sports education study program has 6 professors and 19 associate professors. In the context of internationalization, the study program has implemented several international programs such as Visiting Lecturer from Istanbul Bilgi University, Turkey, Studium General from Edith Cowan University, Australia, and from Bangor University, United Kingdom. Workshop Article Training Camp from Bangor University, United Kingdom. International Student Colloquium 2021 with Hiroshima University, Japan and University Sains, Malaysia. The International Conference of Sport for Development and Peace has been held 3 times by inviting keynote speakers from abroad such as Istanbul Bilgi University, Edith Cowan University, the University of Nottingham, Durham University, UK, Chungbuk National University, South Korea, Republic Polytechnic, Singapore, Loughborough University, Michigan State University, US, Universitas Negeri Surabaya and Ministry of Youth and Sport. In addition, Sports Education Study Program also manages the ASEAN Journal of Sport for Development and Peace. The lecturers also carry out international research collaboration at various universities from abroad such as the University of Wollongong, Australia, Coventry University, United Kingdom, Edith Cowan University, Australia, Kanazawa University, Japan, Istanbul Bilgi University, Turkey. Also carry out various community services as a form of 3 Dharma higher education. The Sport Education Study Program always updates the curriculum according to the needs of the community with lecturers, labor market, alumni, and students. The Sports Education Study Program has also implemented the Education Scholarship Cooperation Program since 2018. With the Indonesian National Sports Committee and the Ministry of Sports and Youth of the Republic of Indonesia for national and international achievement students and has received more than 100 students with scholarship programs. Lecturers of sports education study programs have various achievements and awards in the field of sports innovation and technology. In addition, the Sport Education Study Program also has various international recognitions such as become a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Sport History and Culture, a reviewer in various international journals, keynote speakers at international conferences, and assessor of AQAS International Accreditation. In addition to lecturers, students also have various achievements from national sports events and international events and participating in international conferences. You can visit us through social media of Sports Education Study Program from our website, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you.
This is